A custom built-in project can transform an otherwise plain wall into a really special place. In this case, we made custom display cabinets for the homeowner's album collection. In this series, we're going to cover preparation of the site, fitting of the cabinetry, trimming them out, and actually installation of the entire project. Then we're going to walk around the house and take a look at some of the other things that you might encounter with your built-in projects. Finally, we'll go back to our shop and we'll take a look behind the scenes at how we do some of those things. Well, I'm here at the project site and we're in a fully constructed house. The owners have moved in. The house has been all trimmed out. And a few weeks ago, we were here and we measured this space for a custom record storage cabinet. So the owner has a collection of LPs and we custom built a cabinet back in our shop that's going to fit in this space and allow the albums to stand upright right in this area. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my drawings. I'm going to verify that the measurements on the drawing match the real space. I'm going to verify my ceiling height. I'm going to go back to my cabinets and verify that they fit in this space. And I'm going to start assessing my center lines, my level, seeing how far my walls are out of plumb, and seeing kind of uncovering any surprises that might await me during the installation process. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to lay out the center line of the wall, figure out where my two cabinets are going to come together here. I'm going to mark that on the wall. I'm also going to double check my height, and I'm going to make sure that I figure out the offset of my cabinet because the face frame of my cabinet is actually wider than the cabinet back, which is going to go against the wall. All right, so the center line that I just drew on the wall is actually the center line of this bead detail right here. So this is actually going to separate my two cabinets. And the reason for this is so I could actually build these cabinets as two units, make it easier for the installation that's going to go in between two walls, and also to maximize the sheet good and the yield of the materials that I built these cabinets out of. So now what I have to do is I actually have to figure out the distance between the center line of this molding and the edge of my carcass, which is actually going to sit up against the back of the wall. I know this bead is about 1/2 inch thick, and it looks like my carcass offset is 3/4 of an inch. So if I add half of this thickness, that takes me to 1 inch. So I have a 1 inch offset from my center line. So for accuracy, I'm going to burn an inch here, line up my 1 inch mark on my center line, and just put a tick mark right here at my 2 inch mark. Now I'll use my level to get a good plumb line here, pivoting on that point that I just drew. And that looks pretty good. Now that's where the back of my cabinet's going to line up on the wall. Well, I've got the level out. I'm going to check the walls for plumb. No matter how well a home or a business is built, they're never perfectly plumb, level, or square. They can get them really close, but even if they make them perfect at time of construction, houses are made out of wooden studs, they move a little bit. If you're in a mountainous area, you might have some seismic activity which shifts things around. Basically, we need to make sure that the cabinets that we built in the shop that are perfectly square are going to fit the environment, which may have shifted a little bit. It's real important that I get the level up at about the same area where my cabinet is going to hit the wall, because that amount could change a little bit because of drywall compound buildup, plaster buildup, that sort of thing. So it's looking to me like this is flared out just a little bit. So we will have to do a little bit of scribing there, and I'll check my other wall. It looks like this flares out a little bit at the top as well. So we're actually going to have to scribe these, cutting the cabinets this way a little bit to make them fit just right. All right, so another thing that we have to consider here is the fact that we've got a really unique molding right here on top of our baseboard. And this is actually two pieces of wood here. We've got a traditional square baseboard, and then we have a base cap, so it's two pieces. And this base cap happens to be a really unique profile. So whether it's a newer home with a unique profile or an older home that you just can't get that molding anymore, you've got to be concerned with, how you're going to dress the face of the cabinet. And in this case, we're going to reuse this molding, put it on front of the cabinet to actually make it look like it's always been here. So we'll need to be real careful when we take this off to repurpose it. Another thing that we've got is we've got 2 electrical outlets here. And by code, we can't cover those up. And you'll want to check the building codes in your area. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove these decorative covers and make it real easy for our electrician to be able to get in there, take that outlet, pull it to the front of the case, and then make it look like it's always been there. We're going to take care of all the woodworking for this, and we're going to let the licensed electrician take care of his part. So one last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to check the corners of the room to see how square they are. If I'm really lucky, the opening will be wider in the front than it is at the back, and my cabinets will just slip right in. And in this case, the angle is obtuse, so my cabinets will just slip right in. If that did if that angle was a little acute, then what I'd have to do is I'd just kind of have to sneak the cabinets in there by one another, and that bead that we're going to put in between is going to make it a lot easier if that were the case. Most of the time when molding's installed and houses are painted, the painters will caulk the seam where the top of the molding hits the wall. And one of the things that we can do to make the removal of the molding a lot easier is to actually score that caulk line with a utility knife. All right, my goal here is to protect the molding, so since this wall is going to be covered up with cabinetry, I'm not worried about cutting into the wall at all. So if I'm going to veer off course, veer into the wall, no one's ever going to see that again. Again, the goal is to protect the molding here and reuse it. I'm also going to cut the caulk line in between my base cap and my baseboard. Well, my plan was to use all the molding over again, but the trim carpenters did an amazing job of gluing the base cap to the baseboard, and pulling this all off is proving to be a little trickier than I had planned. So instead of just pulling it off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Victoro multi-tool. I'm going to get in here and I'm going to cut this joint. It's going to be a little louder and messier than I had planned, but I will be able to salvage the rest of this molding. And I do have a little bit of this that we were able to get a hold of, so I should be able to patch it in. And some of these pieces I might even be able to salvage, like this piece. So the cabinets we're going to be installing here have full 3/4 inch thick backs, which basically means anywhere that we can find a stud, we can screw through the back of the cabinet to secure it to the wall. All right? In theory, these studs are on 16-inch centers. Sometimes it varies a little bit. Now, we could use a stud finder to find these, but there's an easier way that I can use too, and that's just to do some exploratory holes here with a screw once I tap on the wall to hear where that stud's located. So if I hit the wall and I hear a deeper noise, it sounds like a drum. All right, there's nothing behind it, and that drum head's just kind of flexing. But as I get closer to a stud, my tone changes. It goes up a little bit, and that's usually an indicator that I have a stud behind there. That seems like a higher pitch there. I'll just start driving a screw in there, and since sheetrock's about 1/2 inch, 5/8 of an inch thick, once I get through a little bit, if I still have resistance, that's proof that there's a stud there. All right, now I'll just measure off 16 inches, and hopefully everything will just kind of fall into place. And I will double check these with screws. All right, so these studs actually are on 16-inch centers, It only took me 3 tries to find one of them.